Hey guys, do you know that 90% of the times strong players don't think during live games? Well, it's hard to believe this, and let me justify my point. Strong players know when to think and when to memorize chess moves. For example, we do a lot of memorization in the opening stage. The opening stage is like the first 10 moves of the game, for lack of a better definition. For example, let me show you what I'm talking about using one opening that I know very well, where strong players don't do much of the thinking until the middle game. And I'm gonna tell you when they think. So let's say after pawn to e4, then black plays d6, pawn to d3, g6, and then white plays pawn to g3. By this time of the game, I can say none of the players is thinking. They're just following the typical opening moves where black is playing the Perk defense and white is playing the King's Indian attack. So let's say black plays pawn to c5 and white goes knight to f3, then knight c6, castle short, knight to f6, knight bd2, castle short. Believe it or not, what both parties are doing here is just following the basic principles in the opening stage. They are not thinking. So the question is, when do strong players take time to think? And by thinking, I mean, when do they stop playing and begin to think for at least 3 to 4 minutes, strategizing which way to go? Number one, it's when they want to strategize, coming up with a novelty or something like that. Number two, which is the most important thing, it is when there is contact between two or more pieces. So this is the greatest secret, you guys. As you can see, there is no contact between white's pieces and black's pieces yet. There is no contact. No pieces attacking anything here. For example, the game may continue as follows. Pawn to c3, this is what people play. Then black may play rook b8, the top played move in the master's database. So these are just strategic moves. Both parties are just trying to put their pieces on the most active squares. So they are both being positional. Noticing this, white plays pawn to a4. Not much thinking involved, by the way. Why? Because there is still no contact between pieces. Let's say a6 is played, the top played move preparing for this. Rook e1 is played. You can see this is move number 10 now. And black finally plays pawn to b5. This is the first contact since the game started. And this is when you would expect somebody to take his time and start thinking what to do. You know, the problem with thinking logically in chess is that you drain your brain power. The more you think, the more you are eating up your energy. So you're likely to blunder something if you keep on thinking logically. You don't have to think on each and every move. That's why we teach you these mini openings on YouTube, so that you get used to them like water. You're supposed to be playing very fast and develop your pieces. That's all you do in the opening stage, unless your opponent's opening is very tactical and aggressive. So this is where I would take my first thing, only because there is contact between my pieces and my opponent's pieces. So in this case, I would take, because I haven't seen much after AB, I mean, there's still no contact here. I'd play something like queen c2, or since my e4 pawn is defended by my d knight, I would consider pawn to d4. And this is when I expect my opponent to take his time and start thinking. So you see, by following these ideas, when to think and when to make automatic moves, we are allowing chess to play itself at the end of the day. Another example, let's say you start with e4, black responds with e5, you go knight f3, and here we can see the first contact. So you have to think, you have to take a break and see how you are going to defend your pawn. And this is why I advise most beginners to stick to these kinds of openings, e4, e5 openings, because you begin forcing your opponent to think right in the opening stage. Knight to f3 is an attacking move, so your opponent has to react. Anyways, you go bishop c4 next. No contact involved. Black plays bishop c5 most of the times, doing the same. Again, there is no contact, so there is no much thinking to be involved here. Remember, the more you think, the more you drain your brain power. But anyways, let's say you just castle short and black plays knight to f6, about to castle short. Now wait a second. This is not just a mere move, it comes with an attack on e4. So when do you think? Again, when there is contact between your pieces and your opponent's pieces. In this case, there is contact, there is real contact. Your enemy's piece is attacking something. I mean, even if there was a knight on c3, I was still going to pause and think what I should do after knight to f6. And the first question was going to be, is my e4 pawn protected? Oh, there's a knight on c3, so my e4 pawn is well protected. Now I can stop thinking and continue developing my pieces which are not developed. So I'm saving time to think in the end game, because the more I think, I'll end up thinking about unnecessary moves. Anyways, we are still in the opening stage. This is only move number 4. Right in the opening stage, what I do is I force my opponent to be on their toes. I play attacking moves immediately, forcing my opponent to think. So instead of going knight c3 or pawn to d3, I play something like pawn to d4, and now my opponent should stop playing and think. Why? Because there is contact between his pieces and my pieces. There is contact between our pieces, you can see. So this is why my opponent needs to pause and think. But most of my opponents lack patience. They don't know when to think and when to stop thinking. So they end up blazing out e takes d4, which is the top played move in the Lichess database, by the way, you can see. So after e takes d4, I immediately push pawn to e5, creating another contact, forcing my opponent to think. Unfortunately, they just go pawn to d5 right away, counterattacking my bishop because they think they are also creating contact. Remember, I was the first one to make this contact between my pawn and their knight on f6. So I'll be the first one to take their knight, and after they take, I will have to wait and see what else I have. Whenever there is contact, you need to play slowly, whether in blitz or standard chess. So after exercising a bit of patience, I would see a better move like rook e1 check, because checks are always good moves. Always give a check when you have to. These are forcing moves. And the top played move here is bishop e6, blocking the check, after which I create another contact with knight g5. So there is contact on e6. Both my knight and my rook are attacking the poor bishop. Where is Black going to put this bishop? They play queen takes f6, the top played move, after which I take advantage of this contact and take with my knight. And after pawn takes, see what I was talking about now. Because of putting so much pressure on my opponent, they ended up hanging their bishop. So the only thing that I'm thinking about is creating contacts. That's another way of attacking. So I go queen h5 check, and at the same time attacking the dark squared bishop on c5. So if this, I can just take the bishop for free. By the way, I'm just up a full piece. Anyways, after castle long, let me ask you a question. Now that you know how attacking players play their games, is there any contact that you think you can create in this position? Just try to think about it. Black just castled long and your queen is on c5. You took the free bishop on c5. Now it's up to you. What would you play in this position? Is there any contact that you can create? I know you're looking at queen takes c4, because that's just a free pawn. But if you exercise patience and think about creating a contact first, you would automatically see this move, bishop g5. For example, the top played move in this position is queen f5, but here you can just take that queen, and after something like ef, you now take the rook on d8. Next, you're going to develop your knight either on d2 or better on a3, creating another contact on c4. So this is no longer chess. This is now the game of contacts. That's how you create attacks, you guys. This is one secret that most advanced players won't tell you. This is how we make contacts in chess. So once again, when do you think? You only need to take time and think when there is contact between your pieces and your opponent's pieces. Otherwise, when there is no real contact, there is nothing to think about. Don't even waste your time thinking for 10 minutes about a move that doesn't exist. So in closing, let me show you an opening which I highly recommend that you guys should be playing, especially beginners and intermediate level players, and I will tell you why. So the opening that I recommend is the Scotch Gambit, beginning with knight to f3. Why? Because you are creating your first contact, and Black should relax and think what to do next. If they play knight c6, addressing this issue, now you go pawn to c4, creating another contact. So you see what you are doing right from the word go is creating contacts, forcing your opponent to think. Remember, the more they think, the more they are draining their brain power. Or in Kasparov's words, the more you keep on attacking your opponent, the more you are increasing their chances to blunder. So in this case, I'm using the word contacts. If e takes d4 happens, now you go bishop c5, and one of the top played moves is bishop c5. What do you do against this? You think of creating another contact, pawn to c3. Why pawn to c3? Because you are asking black to think before playing. If black foolishly takes your c pawn, mission accomplished, because now you have bishop takes f7 check, creating another contact. If king takes, now you go queen d5 check. This is a well-known tactic in the Scotch game, Hacksaw Gambit, where you create this contact. So the Scotch Gambit or the Scotch game is my top recommendation for beginners because you begin creating contacts right on move 2. You know, openings like the Hippopotamus defense, Perk defense, King's Indian defense are only good for advanced players, and let me explain. The reason is that you do not create any contacts in the opening stage, and that's why when you reach the middle game, oftentimes you don't know what to do because you complicated stuff in the opening stage and now you are stuck, you don't know what else to do. But with the Scotch Gambit, you begin creating contacts or attacking chances right from the word-go. Who knows, maybe your beginner opponent may blunder even on the second move. So word of the day, we only think when there's real contact between two pieces. And I'm using the word real contact because there are some contacts that do not just make sense. For example, let's say you go pawn to b3, then black plays pawn to c6, and you go bishop b2. In this position, black should take his time and think about this bishop and this pawn. Why? Because there is real contact between the bishop on b2 and black's pawn on g7. And by following this rule of contacts, black will not blunder the rook in this way. So after seeing this contact, black can even go knight to f6. So he just avoided hanging the rook on h8. And now speaking of real contacts, there is no real contact here. If the bishop takes the knight, this won't be dangerous because we can just take back with our pawn. This is not a real contact. In other words, there is no real contact between the bishop and black's knight. But there was real contact between the bishop and the pawn because without the dark squared bishop, white would have taken on g7. So knight to f6 is what I would play here. And let's say after pawn to e3, black may go pawn to d5. Again, there is no contact here. There is no real contact or whatsoever. So you can just continue playing without doing much of thinking. And if bishop g4 is played, you have to take your time as white and think because there is contact between your piece and your opponent's piece. In this case, your knight is pinned to the queen, so you can't move it. You have to do something about this. For example, pawn to h3, black should think because there is contact between his bishop and your pawn. So probably bishop h4 is not much of a stretch. And then you go pawn to d4. Let's say knight e4. There is still no contact between pieces. So you can go bishop e2 if you want. You're just playing chess. Pawn to e6. And let's say you go knight e. Now black should take his time and think because there is real contact between your bishop and his bishop. So he must take and then you take back. If bishop e7, there will be no contact. But if knight d7 is played, there is contact between black's knight and your knight, so you have to take your time and think. For example, if knight d7 is played, yeah, in this position it's okay to castle because there is a bishop indirectly defending our knight. But just imagine there was a knight on c3 or a pawn. It was going to be wise for us to attend to this problem where there is contact. For example, taking is okay. After this, you just solved the problem to do with the first contact on e5. Anyway, so this was just an important tip that I wanted to share with you guys regarding contacts. So once again, when do you think? You only think when there's real contact between your pieces and your enemy's pieces, because you need to take time to see what is going on, which piece is hanging or which piece is going to hang when you play the move that you want to play. So that will help you get rid of blunders. Contacts. I hope you learned one or two things and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel because that's what encourages me to keep on making more wonderful videos just like this one. Also follow me on Patreon where I post detailed studies and other stuffs that I can't post on YouTube due to certain restrictions, and that's fine. And hope to see you soon in my next video. Until next time, bye bye.